In order to stand up for the fake daughter who was rejected in a proposal, my husband of 3 years abandoned our wedding ceremony and fled on the spot. And my biological brothers, instead of questioning anything, also got up and left. When I saw the secretly filmed video from the assistant, my eyes burned with rage. Jason. Fiona's voice trembled as she put on her pitiful act. 3 years ago, when I ran from the engagement banquet, it wasn't because I wanted to. I had just been diagnosed with cancer, and my sister scolded me, saying I'd only be a sick burden to you all. I was terrified I wouldn't live long enough to stay by your side, so She twisted her story, rewriting the past. Her eyes filled with tears as she turned toward my brothers. I know you've been married to my sister all this time, Jason. You must love her by now, right? And Simon, Ethan, do you not want me as your sister anymore? Jason stayed silent for 3 long seconds. Then his voice, soft as water, cut me open.
No.
I've never loved her. From the beginning to the end, the only woman I ever wanted to marry is you. My brothers moved forward immediately, pulling Fiona into their arms with deep sorrow. Foolish girl, why didn't you tell us you were sick? In our hearts, you've always been our only sister. I stood there, the words piercing through me like a blade. Blood, if not real then in spirit, gushed from my chest. Then what was I? Ever since the day the real daughter who had been lost and later returned to the Corvin family, came back home, I had lived like a shadow. It wasn't until 3 years ago, when Fiona ran from her engagement banquet with Jason, that my life shifted. My eldest brother, Simon, publicly cut ties with her, declaring that from then on, he would only acknowledge me, the true daughter. Jason, without a moment's pause, dragged me to register our marriage. It doesn't matter who she is. My wife can only be you. For 3 years I believed the dream. My brothers showered me with affection. Jason was gentle and considerate, and I convinced myself I had finally gained both their love and his. And today was supposed to be the wedding ceremony I had planned for years. The proof of my place, my happiness. But Fiona returned, and every single one of them abandoned me. Tears blurred my eyes. With trembling hands I tore apart the $100,000 gown I had once cherished and dialed a number I had promised myself never to call again. Sir, could you come take me away? If I could never truly belong in this family, then I would leave it behind forever. The man's deep voice came through the line. If you come with me, I'll arrange immigration for you. But think carefully. Once you leave with me, you'll never return to this country. I froze for a heartbeat, then a bitter smile curved my lips. I know. I have no intention of coming back.
All right.
My people will handle the paperwork and fetch you soon. I hung up, returned to the dressing room, and wiped away my heavy makeup stroke by stroke. Dreams stolen from someone else's hands were never mine to keep. That night, when I stepped back into the Corvin home, the scene that met my eyes nearly crushed me. Jason, a man who had never so much as boiled water because he despised the smell of oil and smoke, was in the kitchen, clumsily simmering soup while wearing an apron.
But it wasn't for me.
It was for Fiona. Simon and Ethan sat beside her, asking tenderly what kind of wedding she wanted, where she hoped to honeymoon. I froze at the doorway, my chest caving in, because this was the picture I had dreamed of countless times, but it was never for me. Fiona and I had been switched at birth. The family who raised me resented me for being a girl and neglected me in every way. When I was 15, I learned the truth. I was actually the daughter of the prestigious Corvin family. Having never known parental love, I had poured every ounce of hope and longing into my blood relatives. But by then, my biological parents were already gone, leaving only my brothers. And because they couldn't bear to part with Fiona, they had paid an enormous sum to adopt her into the family as well. From that moment on, I became nothing more than her shadow. When I was bedridden with pneumonia, my brothers were escorting Fiona to a concert. When she locked me in a dark room full of spiders and I begged for help, they scolded me for lying and starved me for 3 days. In high school, when they discovered my diary where I confessed my feelings for Jason, Fiona immediately claimed she liked him too. That very night, my eldest brother decided she would be engaged to him. My heart was never even considered. She had been cherished as their princess for years, while I was the ugly duckling who stumbled into a castle that never truly belonged to me. Until 3 years ago, when Fiona rebelled and fled her engagement banquet. That night, Jason dragged me to the registry, and I swore to myself I would seize the chance. I would earn my brother's affection, I would make Jason love me. And for a while, I believed I had. Simon returned from business trips with gowns and jewelry. Ethan commissioned a globally limited edition piano for me. Jason outbid everyone at an auction for a pink diamond ring I had admired for only a moment. He even flew me on a private jet just because I once mentioned wanting to see the aurora. I thought the affection that had once belonged to Fiona was finally mine. But now I understood. All I ever had were her scraps. Jason would buy me treasures, but never cook a single meal for me. My brothers would purchase a wedding dress worth hundreds of thousands, but never ask what kind of ceremony I dreamed of. Their true love belonged only to her. When Jason noticed me standing there, his brow furrowed. He pulled me into the kitchen, his voice low. "Callista, don't mention the marriage in front of Fiona again. She's ill, and we've decided to fulfill her wish, to give her the wedding she always wanted. Besides, you and I never actually registered 3 years ago." I spread through my veins. Is this really about her wish, or just your own selfishness? Jason's voice was gentle, but carried a warning. "Don't forget, you took the place that was meant for Fiona. You should be more understanding. This is only temporary. My wife will always be you." Before I could respond, Fiona entered, her tone as sweet as honey. "Callista, you're not unhappy that I've come back, are you? Thank you for taking care of Jason and my brothers these past 3 years. It's such a relief you never registered your marriage. Oh, I don't mean anything else by that. From now on, let's get along well, okay?" My body stiffened. Whenever she smiled like that, disaster followed. Sure enough, her sleeve trembled, and a large black spider crawled from her wrist. "Don't be afraid," Fiona said with false innocence. "It's very tame. Come on, say hello to Callista." My lungs seized. Ever since that night she locked me in a spider-filled room, I couldn't breathe when I saw them. Panic gripped me. I screamed and shoved her away. She toppled to the floor, her eyes brimming with tears. "Callista, why did you push me? Do you hate me so much for coming back? You're lying." Before I could finish, Jason's face turned to stone. "Callista, have you lost your mind? She's sick, and you still laid a hand on her?" He shoved me hard. My body slammed against the stove, and the pot tipped over. Scalding soup poured across my back, searing into my flesh like fire, tearing me open alive. A ragged gasp tore from my throat, the agony so sharp that my vision went white. The stench of scorched flesh filled the air, but not a single person spared me a glance. Simon was the first to move, not toward me, but to Fiona. He bent down and scooped her up with shaking hands. "Does it hurt? Did you hit yourself anywhere? I'll take you to the hospital right away." He didn't even look back, as though I had vanished, as though my suffering was nothing but smoke in the air. Ethan stepped forward next, his face dark with fury. Instead of helping me, he grabbed my collar and yanked me up so hard I stumbled on my toes. "Callista, you're still the same as 3 years ago, vicious to the bone. Fiona told us everything. You threatened her back then until she ran away sick. And now that she's finally come home, if you dare bully her again, don't blame me for being merciless." Pain racked my back, tears spilling down my cheeks against my will. "I never did such a thing." Jason's voice cut through the air, colder than I had ever heard. "Just to compete for attention, you'd even target someone who's ill? Callista, your methods are revolting." The way he looked at me, like filth, like trash, was something I had never seen in his eyes before. All the tenderness I once thought belonged to me had vanished, leaving only disgust. Fiona leaned weakly against Simon, her lashes trembling as she whispered, "Jason, don't blame her. Maybe she just doesn't like me." Jason's gaze softened instantly. He draped his arm around her shoulders and spoke in a voice so gentle it shredded me inside. "Don't worry. As long as we're here for you, that's enough." The pain on my back came in crashing waves, leaving me swaying, barely upright. Through the haze, I watched the 3 of them, Jason, Simon, Ethan, surround Fiona protectively as they led her out the door. The light caught them, warm and golden, as though they were some perfect family. All the tenderness, the protection, the love, it was hers. Always hers. And I was left alone in the empty living room, collapsing in agony until darkness claimed me. When I came to, the pain was unbearable, splitting straight into my bones. My chest ached with every breath, and my eyelids felt like lead. But I was still in the Corvin residence. No one had taken me to the hospital. At the foot of the bed, A maid stood stiff and pale, twisting her apron nervously, too afraid to meet my eyes. Awake. The voice from the doorway was low and merciless. Simon and Ethan entered together, their faces grim, their steps heavy. The pressure they carried weighed down on me until I could barely breathe. Simon came straight to the bedside, his gaze sharp as ice. Fiona is in the hospital. She lost too much blood today. Because of you, her wound reopened. You will give blood to make up for it. Cold disbelief spread through me. I didn't hurt her. I won't give her my blood. Ethan's laugh was bitter. Everyone saw it. You pushed her. You shocked her into bleeding. This is your fault. And now you're going to fix it. I already told you I didn't. Shut up. Simon's glare sliced into me. Whether you admit it or not, your blood type is the only match. Get up. You're coming to the hospital. Pain ripped through me, but I clenched my teeth and shook my head.
No.
I did nothing wrong. Why should I give blood? I'm injured. If I give now, I could die. The air turned to ice. Ethan stepped closer, his voice low and menacing. If you won't give it willingly, we'll force it out of you. Simon's expression was stone. If you had even a shred of conscience, you'd give it without protest. Otherwise, from this moment on, we have no sister. My ears rang violently. My world hollowed out. For 3 years, I had lived off their affection, desperate for their recognition. Now they used that very bond as a weapon against me. I drew a shaky breath, my voice trembling but sharp enough to pierce the silence. I won't admit to something I didn't do. I won't give her a single drop of blood. They didn't know I had already chosen to leave this family. Their threats meant nothing anymore. Simon's face darkened, his voice like frost.
Kneel.
If you won't obey, then we'll make you. The maid flinched, paralyzed with fear. Ethan acted without hesitation, dragging me out of bed and forcing me down. My knees slammed into the floor, pain exploding through my body until my vision blurred black. Kneel here until you agree to give blood and confess your mistake. My lips split beneath my teeth as I forced my back straight. I will not confess to a lie. Simon's patience snapped. His eyes were colder than winter steel. Hold her down. Take her to the hospital by force.
Ethan seized my arm.
I fought, but the movement tore open my wound. Pain seared through me, sweat running down my spine as my body weakened. My strength drained away, my vision narrowing. A violent throb racked my chest. Sounds became muffled, like I was underwater. Then darkness swallowed me whole again. When I awoke, the acrid stench of disinfectant filled my nose. The hospital sheets were icy beneath me, my back burning like fire, pierced by 1,000 needles. Through the half-open door, I heard the doctor's low, uneasy voice. Her back is badly injured. If we draw more blood now, it could kill her. Do it. Simon's reply was cutting, merciless. She hurt Fiona. She must pay. The doctor's sigh sliced through the room, carrying a weight that pierced my chest like rusted steel. You're risking her life. Even a stranger, a doctor who owed me nothing, could sense the injustice of my situation. Yet the family I had lived with for years, the people I had loved and trusted, could not. I tried to lift my hand, but the cold needle pinned it in place. Warmth drained from my body as the blood slowly flowed through the transparent tube, leaving me hollow and fading. Through the haze of my weakening consciousness, I thought I heard Jason's voice, low and careful, as if he feared breaking me entirely. Callista, be patient just a little longer. I know you've suffered. When Fiona wakes, I'll make it right. Before I could respond, his tone shifted, edged with anxiety. Doctor, is that enough blood? Should we take more? Every drop in my veins froze. All these years, I had stood by him through his darkest nights, supporting him as he climbed the ranks of the Whitlock family. I had waited patiently for him to return my love. And yet, the moment Fiona returned, all I had built, my place, my presence, my connection, dissolved. Was this truly the man I had loved for years? I closed my eyes. The pain in my chest twisted with the burning agony along my back, tearing me in two. Perhaps this was better, nothing left to cling to. My immigration paperwork was complete. All that remained was to find a way to make Jason sign the divorce papers, to finally be free. I knew, however, that if I confronted him directly, he would hesitate. For the sake of appearances with the Corvin family, he would refuse. Fiona's illness now made things even more convenient. If he married her and waited until her passing, the alliance between the Whitlocks and the Corvins would remain unchallenged. Yet fate had placed the opportunity in my hands sooner than expected. Barely recovered, I was dragged to the joint birthday celebration for Fiona and me. Since returning to the Corvin family, our birthdays had always been inseparable, but never equal. On stage, she was the star. I was only a shadow. I wanted to refuse. My body ached. My spirit was drained. But Jason's icy hand lifted me from the bed. If Fiona hadn't insisted on making peace with you, I wouldn't have bothered bringing you, he snapped. Peace? I let out a bitter laugh. Of course, she had set a trap. Still, a flicker of opportunity caught my attention. My voice softened, careful, cautious. Jason, today is my birthday too. I want a gift. He glanced at me impatiently, urging me to hurry and change, yet he asked casually, what gift? I nodded toward the file bag on the bedside table. Inside were thick stacks of documents I had prepared long ago, with the purchase contract for a seaside villa neatly on top. That house, I said softly, almost like a sulky plea. Everything's ready, all you need to do is sign. Jason barely glanced. A seaside villa worth a few $100,000 was nothing to him, a trifle compared to the lavish gifts he was preparing for Fiona. Calls from Fiona kept buzzing insistently in the background, urging him to hurry. He flipped to the final page and, without hesitation, scribbled his signature across it. As I watched the familiar strokes imprint on the page, my chest tightened, a bittersweet sting rising to my nose. I forced a small, quiet smile. Thank you. He didn't notice. Tossing the pen aside, he snapped. Hurry up. Stop wasting time. Silently, I slipped the divorce agreement, disguised as the property contract, into my bag. My phone buzzed. A message from my uncle. All formalities are complete. Your flight is booked. I'll pick you up in 3 days. 3 days. Just 3 days, and I would finally be free of this cage that had held me captive for so long. And they would never know. The hotel's revolving doors spun endlessly, swallowing guests, while golden chandeliers glittered above. Bouquets were stacked high in the private room, a champagne tower sparkling under the lights. 2 birthday hats sat on the table, but only one truly belonged to a queen, Fiona. Dressed in a white puffed dress, she smiled sweetly. Callista, come on. Everyone's waiting for you. I silently set my gift box on the side table. Jason had insisted I bring one. Since Fiona had prepared something for me, I couldn't appear empty-handed. Fiona reached for the box, her eyes alight with delight. But the moment she tugged the golden thread, a dead rat toppled out, its tail flicking across the thick carpet, leaving a dark, glistening streak. A stunned silence filled the room, followed by uproar. Disgusting, someone screamed. Ethan sneered. Callista, are you trying to cause trouble? A dead rat as a gift. Simon's face darkened. Today's Fiona's birthday, and you bring this? Don't you have any shame? Jason's expression turned sharp, voice icy. I clearly prepared an LV bag for you to give her. When did you swap it for a rat, Callista? I lowered my gaze, staring at the stiff, lifeless creature, feeling a numb detachment. It wasn't me who had placed it there, but any explanation would have been meaningless.
No one would believe me.
Fiona shrank behind Jason, clutching his arm, her voice sweet and trembling. It's okay, maybe she was joking. Don't be angry, Simon, Ethan, Jason. The more she acted fragile, the deeper their disdain for me grew. Jason glanced at me, his eyes as cold and distant as winter snow.
Sit down.
Don't make a scene. I'll deal with you later. For the sake of Fiona's perfect birthday, the men swallowed their anger and kept the celebration going. I slid to the edge of the table, near the door, an outsider who could be discarded at any moment. A waiter wheeled in a 2-tiered strawberry cream cake, candles forming a heart. Fiona, make a wish first, someone called out. She pressed her hands together, smiling brightly, but her gaze never left me. Slowly, she whispered, my first wish is to be with Jason forever. Cheers erupted.
Kiss. Kiss.
She rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. Jason didn't resist. Instead, he wrapped an arm around her waist. The applause, whistles, and laughter crashed over me like waves, drowning out any sense of my own existence. And the second wish? Someone asked. Fiona lowered her eyes, cheeks flushed. The second, Jason, let's rehearse the wedding, okay? It's only 3 days away, and I'm afraid I won't be a good bride. She grasped his hand, mimicking a wedding officiant. Groom, please kneel on one knee and give me your promise. I froze as I heard a chair scrape against the floor. Jason knelt. Right in front of me, his legally wedded wife. He proposed to another woman. I will treat you well, Fiona, he said, voice low and steady. I sat in the corner, a spectator in someone else's life. On the screen, they kissed, embraced, exchanged vows. My chest hollowed out, leaving no room for bitterness. Only emptiness. It didn't matter. I was leaving. From now on, our paths would never cross again. Fiona's smile faltered as she glanced at me. My calm presence had stolen her joy. Then, with a playful pout, she turned to the crowd. I want a little private birthday time with my girlfriends. Could you all step out and help gather the party favors the hotel sent? Just a little surprise for me, okay? Simon stood first. All right, we'll check with the front desk. Ethan muttered under his breath as he followed. Better not let anything else go wrong. Jason shot me a warning glance. Don't cause trouble. The door clicked shut, the lock falling into place. Inside the private room, only Fiona and her so-called friends remained. The music dimmed, and the sweet, cloying scent of cake became suffocating. Fiona's stilettos clicked against the floor as she approached me, smiling. She leaned slightly, her tone honeyed. Are you enjoying this birthday banquet? Everyone worked so hard for me. Oh, pardon me for you too, since it's your birthday as well. Fiona lightly patted my shoulder, feigning a sweet apology, then quickly withdrew as if I might soil her delicate hand. Don't misunderstand, Callista. I'm not targeting you, she said with a playful blink. I just wanted to share my happiness with you. Look around. Simon booked the venue, Ethan ordered the flowers, Jason designed the ring. It hasn't even been made yet, but the way he knelt down, wasn't that romantic? I lifted my eyes to her, silent. Her smile widened. Don't be upset. The truth is, my brothers dote on me, and Jason loves me. You'd be better off letting go now. It'll save everyone trouble later. Fiona expected humiliation, sorrow, or fear on my face. Instead, I simply murmured, For a brief moment, her excitement faltered, snuffed out by my calm like cold water on flame. You're not angry, she pressed. Or are you pretending? Putting on a show because you can't let go? I glanced at a rotten strawberry on the table and let out a quiet, humorless laugh. Neither. Fiona, I'm leaving. From now on, the brothers and your male lead, they're all yours. I don't want them. Her expression froze. Silence stretched. Then, a sharp, mocking smile curved her lips. I don't believe you. You talk big, but deep down, you can't accept it. Besides, she tapped her chest lightly. I've never handed my life over to anyone. I only trust myself to control my fate. Before I could react, she struck herself with a sharp slap. Then, in a rapid, precise series of blows, she left her pale, radiant face streaked with red marks. I narrowed my eyes. What are you doing? But she ignored me. She lowered her head, tugged her gown strap until it slipped from her shoulder, exposing her collarbone. Then, with deliberate strokes, she raked her fingernails across her skin, leaving faint red scratches. Her gaze lifted suddenly, and she winked toward the girls standing behind her. One of them lunged forward, pretending to block me. Don't go near, Fiona. Another grabbed her arm, their act sharp and loud. Callista, how can you be so cruel? A chair toppled, plates clattered. The room erupted into staged chaos. They clustered around Fiona, their positions choreographed with precision. To anyone entering, it looked like I was attacking her. Then the door burst open. Simon, Ethan, and Jason charged in. Fiona threw herself into Jason's arms, sobbing violently. Callista said I had to give her back my blood. She said I'd die if I didn't, and then she tried to ruin me. She even hit me. Simon's palm struck my face. I stumbled into the dining table, ringing filling my ears. Callista, having a sister like you sickens me, he spat through gritted teeth. Ethan's gaze was colder still. He seized my collar. Callista, fighting for favor, huh? Fine. You lot, hold her down. Strip her. Let's see who gets ruined first. I struggled instinctively, but his strength overwhelmed me. Fabric tore sharply through the air, humiliation slicing deeper than any blade. Jason, film her. Show everyone what a monster she is. Jason stepped to the side, brows furrowed. He remembered the nights he once held me, comforting me through my childhood nightmares, and yet now, he raised his phone and aimed it at me, cold and detached. Callista, you've gone too far. I'm beginning to regret marrying you. Expose her shamelessness. Ethan hissed. Despair and humiliation gnawed into me, inch by inch. This wasn't the first time. Fiona had pushed me downstairs before, then cried and claimed I had attacked her. My brothers had punished me for hours with rulers, and now, history was repeating itself. Clearly, it had been Fiona who broke the vase, yet she clutched her cut hand and insisted I had pushed her. My brothers punished me, forcing me to kneel on the shards all night. On my 18th birthday, she threw the cake into the trash, then with reddened eyes accused me of ruining her celebration. My brothers made me retrieve the cake and eat it. Countless times, I had been blamed for things I hadn't done. In this family, no one ever believed me. Back then, when I had turned to Jason for help, his words had been almost identical to what I heard now. Callista, isn't this your fault? I regret being friends with you. You're always lying. Ethan's sneer faltered when his gaze met my hollow, emotionless eyes. His hand instinctively loosened, and the words of mockery caught in his throat. I rose slowly, my voice calm and steady. If you all believe I'm at fault, then I won't stay in your way any longer. From now on, I'll never be in your way again. The room fell silent. Simon frowned, dismissing my words as stubborn defiance. With a wave of his hand, he said coldly, "Enough. Stop pretending to be pitiful. Go home and reflect. Don't ruin today's atmosphere." Fiona's smile flickered behind her pressed lips. She seemed utterly convinced that no matter what I said or did, it would be dismissed as a joke. Jason's gaze lingered on me, dark and unreadable, yet he did not intervene. He locked his phone, giving no sign that he had ever recorded a thing. I staggered toward the door, numb. The last thing I saw was Fiona's triumphant eyes. Her lips moved silently, forming the words, "See? Callista, you can never beat me." But I no longer wished to fight for men who had never loved me. If I could make a birthday wish for myself, it would be simple: to live the rest of my life in peace, free from Jason, Simon, and Ethan. No one noticed my departure. The night air bit at my cheeks as I hailed a cab and sent the documents straight to my lawyer. After reviewing everything, he stamped them with solemn approval. Alone, I went to City Hall to sever all ties with the Corvin family. The process was grueling, paperwork endless, almost enough to make me give up, but with my uncle's assistant guiding me, every stage, from authentication to archiving, was handled efficiently. "Miss Corvin, are you certain? This is irreversible," the staff member asked one final time. I smiled unflinching. "Yes. From today onward, I have nothing to do with them." When the red seal pressed onto the papers, it felt as if a string deep inside me had snapped. Relief and emptiness mingled in a strange calm. By the time everything was finalized, dawn had broken. I returned to the cold, lifeless house to pack my few belongings. Most of what I owned had been gifts from them, and I wanted none of it. Placing the divorce certificate and the severed ties documents neatly on my desk, I lifted my suitcase and quietly closed the door behind me. Stepping out into the morning light, the first rays of sun felt like a rebirth. I climbed into my uncle's car without hesitation, never looking back. No one knew I had truly left. At the airport, I removed my SIM card and tossed it into the trash. By the time they returned home, I was gone, and they would never find me again. The birthday banquet continued, glasses clinking and laughter rising and falling, yet Jason seemed restless, his face clouded with an unshakable tension. At last, he picked up his phone and hesitated briefly before sending me a message. "Don't dwell on what happened today. You always escalate things, Callista. I don't want you going against Fiona. You must attend the wedding in 3 days. Otherwise, people will gossip about Fiona. Since our marriage was registered first, if you show up, they won't see her as the other woman. Do what I ask. My wife will always be mine, no matter this wedding." Jason's messages vanished into emptiness. For those 3 days, I completely disappeared. No calls, no messages, not even the shadow that once seemed inseparable from him appeared. At first, Simon and Ethan assumed I was sulking, as I had always endured grievances quietly, swallowing bitterness and coaxing my way back into their favor. But this time was different. After spending 3 days with Fiona from dawn until dusk, they finally realized the presence they had unconsciously grown used to all these years was never Fiona. At the birthday party, Simon had instructed his assistant to prepare several gifts, even commissioning an extra customized purple gown. When he presented it to Fiona, she frowned. Since when have I liked purple? This color feels too old-fashioned. Simon froze. Someone had once smiled and said, "The color of wisteria is like a dream." It was for that smile he had commissioned the gown. It wasn't Fiona after all. During the banquet, he had instructed the kitchen to prepare peanut-free desserts. But Fiona took a bite and said, "Who said I'm allergic to peanuts? I love them." Ethan's chest tightened with a hollow ache. He remembered clearly. A certain girl had once been handed peanut cake, suffered an allergic reaction, and he had rushed her to the hospital, heart hammering with fear. Since then, he had ordered the house peanut-free. But Fiona, she liked peanut-flavored foods. Jason, living with Fiona, often called my name by instinct. "Callista, where's my document? Callista, bring me the car keys." Each time he realized the mistake, he swallowed his words and turned back to soothe Fiona. He had been silently troubled for days, wondering why I hadn't replied to a single message. His pride forbade sending more. He had to wait for me to act first. Simon and Ethan felt the same. An unspoken sense of loss filled all three men. Over the years, I had left traces in their hearts that couldn't easily be erased. The assistant reminded Jason of the upcoming honeymoon we had planned in the Maldives. He gripped his wine glass, knuckles white, remembering that night. Our laughter, our teasing, the dreams we had shared about the honeymoon. He had been truly happy then. Now, with Fiona preparing to take my place, emptiness swelled in his chest. Yet he forced it down, convincing himself that Fiona wouldn't live long. In his heart, his wife could only ever be Callista. All three men instinctively thought the same. I had to be upset this time. A woman who cared for them so deeply wouldn't truly leave. They would find a way to bring me back. That was until the wedding day. The hall was ablaze with light, guests filling every seat. Fiona, radiant in her pristine white gown, held Jason's hand and smiled sweetly. "Jason, you're finally going to marry me." But Jason seemed distracted, his mind elsewhere. Simon and Ethan stood at the side, frowning slightly, sensing the undercurrent of doubt and unrest that none of them could yet name. They had tried calling me countless times, coming up with every possible excuse, just to make me answer. Even a cold glance would have been better than the silence I had imposed. To their shock, every single number had been blocked. "She must be sulking," Ethan muttered to himself, trying to hide the panic rising in his chest. "Once the wedding is over, I'll go to her personally and make it right." Simon's expression darkened. "Jason, try contacting her yourself." Jason's face grew even grimmer. "I already tried. She blocked me too." His throat tightened at the thought. Even after 3 days, he had tried sending messages, but all that appeared was a red exclamation mark. His calls were blocked as well. It was as if I had vanished from their world entirely. The men fell silent. In their hearts, a gap had opened, one they could no longer ignore. They put on a tough front, teeth clenched. "Callista's just throwing a tantrum. We'll coax her back later," Ethan said sharply. The wedding music began, and guests rose to their feet. Fiona's eyes shone with pride, her smile dazzling. Jason steeled himself, determined to walk down the aisle. His thought was simple: get through the wedding first, then deal with the rest. Then his phone vibrated. A message flashed on the screen. "Mr. Whitlock, it's bad. Miss Corvin really left. She left the divorce certificate and the documents severing all ties with the Corvin family." The housekeeper who had tidied my room that day was the first to discover the papers. Terrified, she took photos and sent them to Jason. Jason froze. For a moment, his eyes went blank, and the blood seemed to drain from his fingertips. He had assumed I was holding the divorce papers as a threat, a small annoyance to scare him. He had planned to tear them up once I cooled down. But he had never imagined I would actually leave. At that moment, the wedding ceremony came to a sudden halt. Jason stood frozen, panic etched across his face, veins bulging in his forehead. Fiona's voice trembled. "Jason, what are you doing? We're supposed to exchange rings." But her words seemed muffled, swallowed by an ocean of shock in his mind. A thunderclap erupted in his chest, blood and energy surging violently, and the stage and lights blurred before his eyes. He forgot about the guests, forgot about the bride. With a sharp, sudden movement, he yanked his hand away from Fiona and ran off the stage. "Jason!" Fiona screamed, her face pale. She never imagined being abandoned at her own wedding. She looked to Simon and Ethan for support, but the two exchanged a dark glance and strode away without a word. Fiona was stunned. Only days ago, she had been triumphant, thinking she had stolen the men from my life. And now, the tables had turned. She was left abandoned. History, astonishingly, was repeating itself. In her mind, she had always been first in their hearts. Below the stage, the guests murmured in uproar. Their whispers cut through the air like knives, mercilessly piercing Fiona's pride. Wasn't Jason married to Callista? Why is he suddenly having a wedding with Fiona?
Exactly.
Callista is the legitimate wife. Fiona's just the mistress, climbing her way up. The Corvin family spoils the fake more, everyone knows that. I never liked her. Who does she think she is? Some highborn lady? She's just a fake. Such nerve. She only had the Corvin family backing her. Look at her now, everyone's left. Who's going to protect her? The crowd's disdain and sneers were unrestrained, leaving Fiona completely exposed. Fiona, once pampered and glowing under constant attention, was suddenly thrown into chaos. Her dignity shattered, a tingling ran across her scalp, and her chest felt unbearably tight. Finally, she let out a scream, clutching her skirt as she stumbled off the stage. In the dressing room, she slammed the door shut and locked it, eyes red from crying. Her fingers trembled as she clutched her phone, dialing her brother's number. Simon, where did you go? Why did you leave me behind? On the other end, there was only cold, unresponsive silence. She tried her second brother, still no answer. Panicked, she called Jason, but not even a dial tone greeted her. The call was cut off completely. How could this happen? Fiona muttered, nails digging into her palms, voice shaking. It must be that wretched Callista. She did this. If it weren't for her, why would they all just run away? Her makeup smeared, tears mixing with foundation, leaving her face a mess. Meanwhile, outside, the three men were in a frenzy. Jason was first, bursting from the hall, nearly losing control as he slammed the gas pedal without even closing the car door properly. His chest churned, and in his ears, one thought repeated. Callista really got divorced? No, she couldn't possibly have let go for real. She's just trying to scare me. She wouldn't actually leave. But the cold, merciless truth of her action cut through him like a blade, shattering his last shred of certainty. Simon and Ethan weren't faring any better. In record time, they mobilized every connection, sending people all over the city to track me down. Even if it meant turning the entire city upside down, they were determined to find me. Callista, she wouldn't really do something reckless, would she? Ethan broke his calm, sweat forming on his brow. She wouldn't, Simon said, voice low, restrained, seething with anger. She's always been stronger than we imagined. Yet even as he spoke, a sharp ache gnawed at his chest. Despite exhausting nearly every resource, the outcome left them utterly disheartened. Then came the lawyer's definitive message. I had personally gone to City Hall and completed the divorce procedures. I had signed the documents severing all ties with the Corvin family at the ancestral hall, where the family genealogy was kept. The surveillance footage told the story. A girl once gentle, always smiling, now cold, eyes clear and unwavering, demeanor eerily calm. No tears, no outburst, just quiet, deliberate action. The final image captured me alone, dragging a suitcase down the airport corridor, disappearing into the distance. A single plane ticket, bound for the distant Barcelona. Beyond that, my trail ended. No matter their influence, they could no longer reach me abroad. In that moment, the three men realized I truly no longer wanted them. I had severed the final bond, leaving no room for compromise. The emptiness hit them like a physical blow, as if their hearts had been ripped out. Rage surged, nearly uncontrollable, until an assistant cautiously stepped forward. Sir, Miss Fiona's having an episode, the assistant warned. The three exchanged glances, hearts pounding with impatience and irritation. For the first time, the thought struck them. If it weren't for Fiona, they wouldn't have lost me. But what came next forced them to suppress their anger. Her condition isn't good, the assistant continued. The doctor said her emotions could seriously affect her health. Please, hurry over immediately. Fiona's face was pale, her wedding dress in disarray. Makeup smudged, yet it could not hide the tears streaking down her cheeks. When she saw the three of them enter, her voice choked with anguish. Simon, Ethan, Jason, were you taken away by Callista? Did she do something? I just wanted a wedding. Is that really so hard? I'm about to die. Why does she still have to take you away? Her cries pierced the room, sharp and heart-wrenching. The three men stood by the bedside, each carrying a different weight in their expression. Jason's eyes were dark with gloom, his chest heavy with unspoken frustration. He forced the agitation down and gently patted Fiona's shoulder. We can have the wedding next time. Fiona, focus on resting and recovering. Treatment is what matters most right now. Simon and Ethan remained expressionless. Yet seeing her tear-streaked face, their minds drifted to a distant figure slowly walking away, Callista. I used to be lonely too, tears in my eyes, yet swallowed them without seeking comfort. Now, the one they had wanted to care for was already gone. Fiona leaned partly against the hospital bed, her tears clinging stubbornly to her lashes, her expression pitiful. Her voice, soft and trembling, pierced them like needles. Actually, ever since I was little, Callista never really liked me. She lowered her gaze, crystalline tears glinting in the light. She always felt like I was taking her things, clothes, toys, or, later, people. Pausing briefly, as if afraid to say too much, she glanced at the men, eyes filled with fear and timidity. I never complained, because I didn't want to ruin the family harmony. But she always wore a cold expression. Sometimes she locked me in a room, not letting me out. I was so afraid of the dark, I didn't dare scream, so I just endured it. Her voice grew quieter, trembling slightly, as if touching a forbidden subject. Later, even at school, she always kept an eye on me. Whenever a friend got close, she would push them away. I knew she was my sister, and I shouldn't argue, so I endured it. But sometimes I really couldn't help feeling wronged. By the end, Fiona was sobbing uncontrollably, fingers gripping the bedsheet, body trembling. She looked fragile and pitiful, like a delicate flower suppressed in the shadows for years. The hospital room fell into an instant, stunned silence. Simon's brows knitted, concern heavy in his expression. Memories surfaced. Perhaps his gaze had been too cold and distant at times, while Fiona had always been obedient and gentle. Ethan lowered his eyes, urgency giving way to a dawning understanding. Indeed, the past 3 years had almost made them forget how Callista, taking advantage of being the true daughter of the Corvin family, had seemed to bully Fiona relentlessly. They had only wanted peace, but her presence had disrupted everything. Jason's face remained stern, silent. Every word Fiona spoke seemed stitched directly into his heart, yet he sensed something was off. After all, he had known Callista intimately for 3 years. She was never the type to vent her emotions by hurting others. The room's tense silence was suddenly broken as the assistant rushed in, flustered and breathless. Mr. Whitlock, something terrible has happened. The plane crashed. In that instant, the sounds of the hospital room seemed to vanish entirely. Fiona didn't understand, unaware of which plane Jason meant, or that I had already gone abroad. What plane? Jason's voice was low and hoarse, squeezed from deep within his chest. The flight Miss Callista took to Barcelona crashed. Every passenger perished. The air seemed to explode. All 3 men froze, their expressions changing in unison. Ethan sprang to his feet, voice icy. What did you say? The assistant's voice trembled. The news is confirmed. The plane crashed into the mountains on the border of Damistam. Rescue teams are already en route. Before he could finish, Simon had already bolted from the room, shouting hoarsely, "Drive. Go to the scene." Jason remained frozen, the roar in his ears deafening. His chest felt hollow, as if his heart had been ripped out. He struggled to breathe. Under the night sky, the mountain wind howled, casting the peaks in an eerie, ghastly white. The 3 men nearly stormed the rescue area by force. The rescuers tried to block them. This area is dangerous. Unauthorized personnel cannot enter. We are not unauthorized personnel. Simon shouted, bloodshot eyes blazing. That's our sister in there. Jason said nothing, but his eyes were red. He yanked a rescue rope, tying it around his waist. His voice was hoarse but firm. Let anyone try to stop me. The rescuers had no choice but to grudgingly allow them to assist from the perimeter. They watched as bag after bag of belongings was carried out. Watches, wallets, wedding rings, charms. Each item bore stains of blood and ash. That's my husband's. That's my daughter's backpack. The cries echoing across the mountains tore through the night. The three men felt their hearts squeezed by iron clamps, leaving them gasping for breath. They could hardly look, hardly dare imagine. What if the next bag contained my belongings? What if it held my necklace, my clothes? How could they endure it? For the first time, Ethan fell to his knees in the mud, hands pressed to the ground, breathing ragged. Simon turned his back, eyes bloodshot, clenching his teeth so tightly no tears could fall. Jason gripped his fists, nails digging into his palms. He knew if he saw my body, he would lose his mind. I had lived cautiously, never asking for anything. And yet, he had once pushed me into the abyss. The mountain wind whimpered, flames flickered, and the night stretched like an endless grave. The three men, clad in rescue team vests, scrambled through the debris, each cough from the smoke-laden air tearing at their lungs. Every second was torment. A rescuer carefully set down a bag. These are the recovered belongings. The three men lunged forward, eyes fixed. Not mine. Yet relief did not come. Only panic grew. Was it good that my belongings weren't there? Or a worse sign? The night wind cut to the bone as they stumbled across the charred mountainside, fingertips torn, clothes caked in ash. But they did not stop.
To stop would be to accept it.
To stop would be to acknowledge the cruel truth that I might already be gone. Jason stood atop the mountain, staring down into the pitch-black Crash Valley. The wind screamed past, like countless wailing ghosts. Just standing there, he could hardly bear it. And me? How terrified must I have been while falling? Did I ever think to call for help? Did I ever think I'll never see them again? Jason's heart tore apart, inch by inch. If only he hadn't followed the Corvin family's cold ways. If only he had realized his feelings sooner. Would I have never boarded that flight? Would I still be alive now? As I dragged my luggage out of the airport, my phone lit up with breaking news. This evening, the flight to Barcelona crashed in Damistam. Currently, it has been confirmed that there are no survivors on board. The inferno on the screen flared before my eyes, making my chest tighten. It was a ticket I had bought with my own hands. If someone hadn't intervened in time, I too would now be buried in the charred wreckage. My fingers trembled slightly, and a wave of lingering fear surged through me. Not long ago, just as I was about to head to the boarding gate, a figure appeared in front of me. It was Ronald's assistant, out of breath, sweat beading on his forehead as if he had run all the way to reach me. "Miss," he said urgently, his voice low, "Mr. Brimmer has already prepared a private plane for you. Please follow me this way." I froze, my steps faltering. I hadn't expected Ronald to go to such lengths. He had arranged a private plane for me. I thought back to the last time I had flown privately. It had been with Jason, to see the aurora. A shadow crossed my eyes for a moment before I smiled faintly and followed the assistant. He had already taken my luggage, guiding me efficiently through a private passage. Ronald was only 3 years older than me, yet someone I had been forced to call Mr. Brimmer since childhood. Fragments of the past flashed through my mind. Before I had been brought back to the Corvin family, I had lived with the family where I had been switched at birth. Life had been tight, so tight that even a full meal felt like a luxury. It wasn't that my family had no money. They simply didn't care for me because I was a girl. I was never given allowance, never considered. Among my relatives, the Brimmers were by far the wealthiest. During holidays, their gifts were always the most elegant. Adults complained of their arrogance aloud, yet secretly hoarded the presents, unwilling to use them. My familiarity with Ronald stemmed from the fact that, as children, we had both been left to live with our grandparents. My parents had considered me a burden, while Ronald's parents wanted him to avoid growing up arrogant, so they sent him to the countryside to experience the hardships of ordinary life. At the time, I didn't understand why I had to call someone my own age sir, nor why the Brimmers were so wealthy while my own family had so little. I simply trailed behind Ronald like a shadow, begging him to take me along when he went out to play. Ronald was always patient. When he realized I was almost 8 and still hadn't been sent to school, he taught me to read, to write, and to discern hypocrisy from sincerity. He took me to the river to catch fish, giving me half, yet always letting me keep the biggest one. When I was bullied, he would frown, shield me behind him, and say in his innocent yet firm voice, "She's my little sister." Because of Ronald, I went to school, had new clothes to wear, and was no longer alone. Countless times during summer vacations, I had looked forward to seeing him. But later, my grandparents passed away, Ronald was sent abroad, and I was brought back to the Corvin family. Our paths diverged completely. I once thought our parting would be forever.
Until now.
At my wit's end, I had no choice but to shamelessly dial that number. The moment the call connected, I held hardly any hope. But Ronald paused only for a second, then said without hesitation, "Leave it to me." He was still the same boy I remembered, only now the youngest person in charge of the Brimmer. The private plane took off smoothly. I leaned back against the leather seat, the engine buzzing in my ears. I lowered my head and glanced at the news feed one last time. On the news screen were the charred remains of the crash. The reporter's voice droned on, but my attention was fixed on three figures in the background: Simon, Ethan, and Jason. Their expressions were more disheveled than I had ever seen. Expensive shirts smeared with dirt, eyes bloodshot, they disregarded both status and decorum, digging through the blackened fuselage with their own hands. They believed I was on that plane. They might even be preparing to face my corpse. A sharp ache gripped my chest. All those years of their neglect, cold stares, and harsh reprimands flooded my mind in vivid scenes. Yet now, seeing them so desperate, so disheveled, suggested that they had finally realized what losing me truly meant. Why put on this false display? Back then, they hadn't cared about my life at all. I slowly closed my eyes. Let it be. Let them believe that I had perished in this disaster. Perhaps this was the best ending between them and me. I was no longer a pawn to be granted favors or trampled on at their whim, nor did I have to tremble in the guise of their so-called warmth. Through death, I could finally bid a complete farewell to my past self. The plane touched down smoothly. Ronald's estate lay nestled in a private woodland on the outskirts of Brelona. The tall black iron gates slowly swung open, revealing a wide driveway flanked by neatly trimmed pine trees, with a fountain shimmering silver under the moonlight. As the car drove in, the vast mansion came into view, majestic, like a European castle. The assistant opened the car door for me, speaking with deference. "Miss, please step out. Mr. Brimmer is already waiting for you." The night breeze drifted by, carrying the fresh scent of grass and trees. I took a deep breath, releasing the weight I had carried for countless years. This time, I would no longer rely on anyone, nor beg in humility. I would use my own identity, my own hands, to carve out a completely new world. Meanwhile, back at the crash site, every corner of the cliff had been thoroughly searched by Jason. Simon, carrying a searchlight, had scraped his knuckles raw, yet continued inch by inch to pry open cracks in the rock. Ethan had knelt in the mud, using his hands to push aside rubble and weeds. They searched tirelessly, only to be met with disappointment again and again. Most of the wreckage had already been cleared, and the rescue team's announcements were cold, unfeeling. No survivors. After several days, the three of them seemed hollowed out in bone and blood. Only when forced to retreat did each slump onto the edge of the cliff, eyes filled with exhaustion and despair. Ethan's throat tightened as he whispered, "She really isn't here anymore?" No one answered. They all understood, even as their hearts refused to admit it. That reality had cornered them. In just a few short days, the three men had aged 10 years. The sharp, commanding aura they once carried had vanished, leaving only sheer fatigue. Meanwhile, at the Corvin residence, Fiona was already waiting. Today, she had deliberately worn a plain black dress, her eyes red from crying. Her steps toward them were soft and tentative, as though afraid to disturb their fragile state. "Jason, Simon, Ethan," she called softly, her voice choked with emotion. "I know it's hard for you, but the dead cannot come back to life." Before she could finish, Jason abruptly lifted his gaze. His eyes, bloodshot and cold as a blade, fixed on her. Fiona's heart tightened sharply. Her feet froze, her breath catching. In the past, whenever she had shed tears, Jason would soften and patiently comfort her. But this time, he merely stared, cold and unyielding, as if uttering another word would make him tear her apart without mercy. "Shut up." Jason's voice was hoarse, laced with anger suppressed to its absolute limit. Fiona froze. Her eyes reddened instantly as tears streamed down her cheeks, one by one. It was the first time Jason had shown her a truly cold face. The night was deep and still as he stepped into the room that had once belonged to me. The servants had cleaned it spotless, yet the pristine order only made it feel emptier. The photo that had once rested on the bedside table was gone. The dressing table was immaculate, but none of my cosmetics remained. The walk-in closet was bare, even the hangers removed, as if no one had ever lived here. A tight knot formed in Jason's chest, as if someone were gripping it. "Callista," he murmured softly, his voice trembling. Fragments of the past echoed in his mind. The anticipation in my eyes on our wedding day, the times I had complained about Fiona's malice, and he had impatiently said, "Stop being ridiculous." The gradual fading of my laughter, replaced by silence and distance. He realized that, little by little, I had already been withdrawing from this family. He didn't want to believe it, yet the emptiness before him forced the truth into his heart. I truly intended to leave him. Jason walked to the desk and pulled open a drawer, discovering a pale blue diary. The edges of the pages were slightly curled, clearly used for a time, then abruptly abandoned. He paused, then opened to the first page. 3 years, finally. I can have a wedding with the person I love. I've waited for this moment for so long. Wearing the wedding dress, standing by his side, I feel like the happiest person in the world. Jason's fingers trembled, his breath quickening. He turned to the second page, but the handwriting had become messy, the ink smudged. At the wedding, he abandoned me. Fiona scared me with spiders again, and I even got hurt, yet everyone blamed me. When I was little, I was locked in a room full of spiders. Even now, nightmares wake me in panic. But no one remembers, no one cares. Line by line, the handwriting grew messier, the strokes twisting as if written in utter despair. On the very last page, only one scrawled sentence remained. "I no longer want to chase a love that isn't mine." Jason's vision darkened. He almost collapsed to the floor. All his stubborn biases crumbled in that instant. What did the diary mean? Wasn't Fiona the one being bullied all along? But reading through it, it seemed the truly mistreated one had been someone else. Jason gripped the diary so tightly that the veins in his hands stood out. Panic finally set in. He snatched his phone and coldly ordered his assistant, "Check it now. Where exactly has Fiona been for these 3 years, and what has she been doing?" The night was heavy and still. The lights in the Corvin residence remained bright, yet the atmosphere was oppressive, suffocating. Simon and Ethan lay awake for a long time, unable to find rest. Before dawn, they heard muffled sobs coming from downstairs. Frowning, the two of them went down and saw the usually calm, taciturn housekeeper kneeling in the corner of the living room, covering her face as she wept uncontrollably. "Bad luck," she whispered. Simon frowned tightly, his voice tinged with impatience. "She hasn't been found yet, and you're crying? Who are you crying for?" Ethan's expression was equally dark, his eyes flashing with irritation. At this moment, all they could feel was the pain of losing their sister. The last thing they wanted to see was someone shedding tears in front of them. But the housekeeper did not fall silent in fear, as she usually would. Her shoulders shook with sobs, tears soaking her clothes, her voice choked, barely able to form words. After a long while, she lifted her head, eyes bloodshot, her voice hoarse. "Mr. Simon, Mr. Ethan, I really can't hold on anymore. All these years, I've watched. Miss Callista suffered so many injustices." Her words left the two men stunned. Simon frowned, his voice cold. "What do you mean by that?" The housekeeper wiped her tears forcefully, her voice trembling with heart-wrenching anguish. "You've always believed that Miss Callista was the one bullying Miss Fiona, but that's not true. It was Miss Fiona, who kept hurting her over and over. I shouldn't say this, but Miss Callista is gone now. If I don't speak up, I'll never be able to live with myself." Her cries echoed through the spacious living room, laden with uncontainable despair. "Do you remember that winter? It was snowing, unbearably cold. Miss Fiona deliberately locked Miss Callista on the balcony, claiming that Miss Callista had gone out on her own to play. When you rushed home, you found her frozen, purple with cold, while Miss Fiona cried, saying that Miss Callista had pushed her and that she only locked the door in frustration. You believed her and even punished Miss Callista with house arrest, but I clearly saw Mississippi Fiona close the door with her own hands." Simon's chest tightened, his expression darkening instantly. The housekeeper's voice trembled with sobs, growing increasingly urgent. "And there was another time. Miss Fiona poured hot water on Miss Callista's hand, causing large blisters. But she cried, saying that Miss Callista had grabbed her teapot and accidentally spilled it. You were so heartbroken back then that you locked Miss Callista in the storage room for a whole day, but I was right there, and it was clearly Miss Fiona who pushed her first." Ethan's fingers trembled, disbelief flashing in his eyes. The housekeeper was on the verge of collapse. "And Miss Fiona loved playing the victim the most. In front of you, she would claim that Miss Callista often stole her things. But in reality, she secretly hid Miss Callista's jewelry and dresses, then pretended to be innocent, accusing Miss Callista of hitting her. I've seen it so many times. Whenever Miss Callista was scolded by you, she didn't dare explain anything, just quietly shed tears, even though she hadn't done anything wrong. She broke down completely at this point, unable to speak through her sobs. The air was deathly silent. Simon felt a cold chill creeping into his chest, sinking deep into his bones. Is what you're saying all true? His voice was low, tinged with disbelief. The housekeeper couldn't stop her tears from falling. Mr. Simon, I've been in this family for over a decade. I watched you grow up when you were little. I have no reason to make up these words to deceive you. Every time Miss Callista was punished, I wanted to speak up for her. But Miss Fiona was your favorite. Who would dare question her? I was also afraid of being kicked out, so I could only watch helplessly. But now, with Miss Callista's fate uncertain, I can't bear it in my heart. Ethan's throat tightened, his voice hoarse. But those times, Fiona cried so genuinely back then. The housekeeper shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Miss Fiona was the best at playing the victim. One cry in front of you, and Miss Callista was made out to be the villain. But Miss Callista would always lower her head, not daring to say a word. Have you ever thought, if she really was the one bullying, why never once did she defend herself in front of you? Her words fell like sharp needles piercing straight into the hearts of the two men. Simon's fingers trembled slightly as countless images flashed through his mind. My pale face when I was made to stand as punishment, me curled up alone in my room when I was sick, the faint glimmer of sorrow in my eyes during my birthday party, almost hidden from view. At the time, they had never given it much thought. They had only assumed it was because I was too sensitive or not generous enough. Now, looking back, none of it made sense anymore. I don't believe it. Ethan shook his head violently, instinctively resisting. You're just a servant. Why should we believe your words? Fiona is our sister. We grew up together. How could she possibly do such things? Simon's face was equally stern, his heart churning, yet he still hesitated to accept the truth. Seeing this, the housekeeper's tears flowed again. Mr. Simon, Mr. Ethan, whether you believe me or not, I have spoken today. If I keep this hidden any longer, Miss Callista would never forgive me from the grave. Having spoken, she covered her face and left, her cries lingering in the air. The living room fell into a deathly silence. Simon leaned against the sofa, his fingers clenched so tightly they had gone white. Ethan froze completely, his gaze vacant. They wanted to deny it, but could not fully do so. Each page of the past pierced their hearts like a sharp blade. After a long moment, Ethan spoke softly. Simon, could it be we were wrong? Simon remained silent for a long while, then finally said, We can't just believe a servant's words alone. He lifted his eyes, his gaze cold and hard. Back then, when they said Callista bullied Fiona, weren't there plenty of outsiders present? Friends, classmates, we'll go ask them and get to the truth. Ethan nodded, his voice tight. Yes, we need to find out. Who's lying and who's telling the truth? The two brothers exchanged glances, their eyes full of hesitation, doubt, and a pain that had nowhere to rest. Just as they were about to reach out to the friends from back then, their phone rang. The name flashing on the screen was Jason. A jolt ran through both their chests at the same time. Jason's voice was low and weary, laced with fury repressed to the extreme. You two, come to the Whitlock residence. I have something to show you. That night, the lights of the Whitlock residence burned through the darkness. As Simon and Ethan stepped into the living room, a wave of icy coldness struck them, sending chills deep into their bones. Jason sat at the far end of the long table, gaunt and haggard, the bloodshot veins in his eyes shocking to behold. Before him lay piles of thick documents, results painstakingly uncovered by his assistant without rest. He offered no idle greetings, only a cold, sharp command. Take a look. A thick stack of papers was slammed onto the table, the impact echoing through the empty room, making their chests ache. Simon flipped open the first page, his gaze gradually freezing. It was a record of bank transfers. Clearly documented, over the past 3 years, Fiona had frequently received enormous sums from a wealthy overseas businessman. Accompanying the records were photographs. Photos of Fiona, dressed in luxurious gowns, linking arms with a white-haired older man, attending various banquets, her smile alluring and composed. A few more photos showed Fiona sitting on a yacht, raising glasses with the older man in a celebratory toast, their gestures intimate. Ethan's breath caught, and he gripped the edge of the table tightly. Jason sneered, his voice sharp with hatred. 3 years ago, Fiona never had cancer. She simply ran off with this old man and became his mistress. Your good little sister didn't want to stay in the Corvin household, nor did she want to marry me. Back then, I hadn't even secured my position. She looked down on me, despised me, so she found a man with deeper pockets. Simon abruptly lifted his head, his gaze sharp and intense. Impossible. Jason's eyes were ice cold. Impossible? Then look at these. Look. He slammed down a stack of photos. They depicted Fiona being publicly humiliated by the wealthy man's wife. She was slapped to the ground, her luxurious gown torn, her makeup smudged, looking utterly disheveled. She cried and shouted, kneeling on the ground in desperate pleas, only to be harshly kicked by the woman. The scene was utterly tragic and unbearable. She spent 3 years indulging herself, then got abandoned. When she found out I had inherited the Whitlock family and become a man no one could reach, she got an idea. She wanted to come back and resume being Mrs. Whitlock. Jason's voice was icy to the extreme, yet a cruel smile tugged at the corner of his lips. Do you know how she did it? She hired an actor to play along, to stage the whole story. She lied, claiming she left 3 years ago because of illness, and that after meeting that man, they supported each other. She couldn't resist wanting to marry him, only to be heartlessly cast aside. He clenched his fists, knuckles white. She called me crying, begging for help, saying things like, I'm really suffering. I had no choice. Haha. That cold laugh dripped with blood and hatred. Ethan's heart tightened sharply. So, all those times she claimed to have cancer. Completely fabricated. Jason ground his teeth, voice seething with rage. She bribed the hospital, falsified medical records. Anyone who looked at such a clumsy lie carefully wouldn't be fooled for even a day.
But you?
You believed her. Because of your bias, you never bothered to check. Just a single tear from her, and you let go of all doubt. And the result? You were deceived for 3 whole years and caused Callista's death. At the last 4 words, his voice trembled violently, almost unable to continue. The brothers' faces went pale in an instant. Countless memories flashed through Simon's mind. Fiona crying in their arms, saying, Callista bullied me again. Fiona stubbornly saying, it's okay, I'll endure it. Their own righteous anger as they scolded Callista. But now, all of it felt like a knife, plunged mercilessly into their chests. Ethan's voice was hoarse, eyes bloodshot. We've been helping her bully Callista all this time? Jason's eyes were blood red, lips tightly pressed, silent. The air was so still that one could hear a pin drop. Simon pressed his hands hard against his face, palms cold and damp. Regret churned violently in his heart, yet his reason refused to accept it. Maybe Fiona was just spoiled, he murmured weakly, voice frail. She's been coddled since she was little, spoiled and willful. These past few years outside, she took the wrong path. She never intended to harm Callista. Ethan clung to this last lifeline, desperately echoing. Yes, maybe Fiona was just spoiled. To say she bribed the hospital, staged everything to deceive us, that can't be true, right? How could she do something so cruel? She's still the sister we've watched grow up with. Their voices trembled, as if trying to convince even themselves. They still tried to leave Fiona with a shred of dignity. Otherwise, they would be forced to admit they had once driven their own sister to death. Jason watched them coldly, chest heaving with violent, ragged breaths. The pain in his eyes ran deeper than theirs. He was not only the fool deceived for 3 years, but also the man abandoned back then, now treated as the placeholder husband. All of this cut deeper than any blade. But even in their pain, Simon and Ethan clung desperately to the last thread of hope. They still refused to admit that they had once pushed their true sister into the abyss. Seeing their stubborn blindness, the coldness in Jason's eyes finally sharpened into a blade. His voice was low and hoarse, carrying an unmistakable, ruthless edge. You've always said that ever since high school, Callista was the one bullying Fiona. If you don't believe me, then bring her so-called friends here. Face to face. Let's see who's really lying. Jason sat under the dim light, his expression sharp and cold, eyes filled with hatred. His chest heaved violently, fingers pale from gripping the edge of the table too tightly. He hated his own past foolishness, his blind trust. He hated that he hadn't seen the truth sooner, that he had watched that girl stand alone, helpless. It was his fault. He had failed to protect her. Now, all the feelings he had held for Callista had nowhere to go, burning like a fierce fire within him, scorching through the night. He even wished he could strangle Fiona then and there, make her pay with her life for Callista. But he couldn't. Even if his brothers harbored doubts, they would never allow him to act. A flash of manic rage flickered in his eyes, but he forced it down. His voice was icy. Since you still cling to illusions, let the truth slap you in the face. Simon and Ethan exchanged a glance, their hearts churning, reason struggling against shock and denial. What Jason said confirmed what they had feared. Nearly all of their understanding had come from Fiona's tearful claims. If they wanted to uncover the truth, the only way was to gather all the so-called witnesses from back then. A thought quietly formed in both their minds. Then we'll use the excuse of holding a belated wedding to gather everyone from back then, Simon said, voice low and serious. Ethan nodded, eyes sharp and cold. Then we'll ask them face to face and get the truth. Just as his words fell, light footsteps came from upstairs. Fiona had woken and descended the stairs in a snow-white silk nightgown. Seeing Simon and Ethan, her eyes lit up. With a sweet smile and soft, delicate voice, she said, "Simon, Ethan, you've come to see me?" She walked lightly, completely unaware of the icy tension in the room, carrying a trace of youthful excitement. But when the two brothers saw her, their hearts clenched sharply. When had this striking, spoiled sister before them turned into someone they no longer recognized? Their throats tightened, emotions churning, yet no comforting words could escape. Simon forced his voice, replying curtly, "Just came by to take a look." Ethan merely nodded faintly, saying nothing more. The two brothers soon got up and left. The smile on Fiona's face stiffened in the wind, rigid and fragile. She watched their backs fade away, a pang of unease rising in her chest. But she quickly pushed it down and turned to look for Jason. "Jason, what were they talking to you about just now?" Her eyes carried a hint of probing curiosity, and she leaned in with a coquettish, delicate tone. Jason looked up. Those eyes, dark as ink, settled heavily on her, utterly devoid of warmth. Fiona felt a sudden shiver. Her whole body turned cold.
She didn't understand why.
Why did this man's gaze feel so unfamiliar, sending a shiver of fear through her? The air froze for several seconds. Jason finally suppressed the raging hatred in his chest and said coldly, "Nothing." His voice was heavy and icy, like a blade driven straight into her heart. Fiona didn't dare ask further, but a flicker of displeasure stirred in her chest. She reached out, trying to tug at his arm with a coquettish gesture. "Jason, I can't sleep tonight. I want to sleep with you." Her voice was laced with charm and dependence. But Jason remained expressionless, coldly brushing her hand aside. "In a few days, the wedding will be held again. By then, you will get everything you're supposed to have." Fiona froze. The smile on her face stiffened, then stiffened even more. But soon, Jason's words, "The wedding will be held again," floated through her mind, and the suffocating frustration in her chest slowly ebbed. Yes, she was to be the future lady of the Whitlock family. She was the only pampered daughter of the Corvin family. As long as the wedding went through, her position would be unshakable. Callista? That jinx had long been dead. Ridiculous. She was gone, yet still so restless, daring to make the men of the family linger on her memory. Fiona returned to her room, heart full of venom, grinding her teeth as she cursed. "Wretch. Even dead. You want to take what's mine. Jinx. Worthless life. Serves you right to die early." Her words were filthy and venomous, each sharper than the last. The night wind outside howled, carrying her hateful words with unnatural clarity. Yet she did not notice a tiny red, blinking faintly atop the bookshelf. In the past few days, riding high on the excitement of preparing for the wedding, Fiona felt almost like she was floating on clouds. She had even suggested going to City Hall first to register the marriage, securing her status firmly by Jason's side, just like Callista had once done. Yet strangely, over these past days, she had hardly seen him. He was either away on a business trip or working late. Every phone call was answered by his assistant with vague replies. A subtle unease gnawed at her, but she mostly brushed it aside. After all, men being busy was normal. Finally, just the day before the wedding, she received a notification. Let's first gather with friends for a meal. Fiona didn't think much of it and happily agreed. She thrived on these gatherings, surrounded by wealthy, influential young elites who all knew she was a counterfeit heiress, yet still lavished attention and praise upon her. Every time she thought of it, a rush of exhilaration surged through her veins. She was the true winner. Callista was dead, and now it was her time to shine. The banquet was held at the city's most prestigious hall. Lights blazed, the red carpet stretched long, and crystal chandeliers scattered shimmering reflections across the room. Fiona was dressed in resplendent finery, wearing a newly tailored gown and high heels, entering like a queen making her grand debut. Fiona is here. Oh, the bride-to-be, you look radiant. This time we finally get to toast at your wedding. We've been waiting so long. Hearing these flattering words, Fiona's heart swelled with delight. Her smile was saccharine and dazzling as she lifted her chin, basking in the attention of the crowd. Before long, the private room's doors were pushed open. Jason, Simon, and Ethan arrived, fashionably late. The three of them stood tall, expressions stern and imposing. Seeing them, Fiona's heart leapt with excitement. She quickly stood up, voice soft and coquettish. Simon, Ethan, Jason, you finally came? I've been waiting for you for ages. She even deliberately stepped forward, lightly tugging at Jason's sleeve, eyes full of feigned affection. But he merely cast her a cold glance, offering no response. The atmosphere stiffened subtly. Sensing the tension, the others immediately fell silent, no longer daring to chatter frivolously. A few of Fiona's girlfriends found an excuse to speak. Fiona, go touch up your makeup. Completely unsuspecting, she beamed with self-satisfaction and left. Once she was gone, the mood in the private room turned sharply frigid. Jason sat at the head of the table, gaze dark and razor-sharp. Simon and Ethan flanked him on either side, faces icy enough to freeze a person. Someone cautiously spoke up. Mr. Whitlock, may we ask why you called us here today? Jason lifted his eyes. He rapped sharply on the table, voice cold and hard as iron. Explain clearly what happened back then between Fiona and Callista. Tell me, who was really the one being bullied? The private room fell into a silence, so deep one could hear a pin drop. The young guests exchanged uneasy glances, their faces pale with panic. Simon smiled, but it was a cold smile, devoid of warmth. What's the matter? Don't want to speak? Or shall I dig into your company's flaws and kick you straight out? Ethan's voice was even colder, detached. You should know that the wrath of the Corvin family is not something you can withstand. It was as if a knife had been pressed to their throats. After a long, suffocating pause, someone finally could not hold back. Actually, ever since high school, the one being bullied wasn't Fiona. It was Callista. The words dropped like a blade, tearing through silence. Everyone's hearts skipped a beat. Simon shot up, voice trembling. Make yourself clear. The speaker drew a deep breath, then blurted out everything at once. Back then, everyone knew Fiona was cunning. She took advantage of being the favorite in your family, crying and pretending whenever it suited her, constantly setting traps behind the scenes. Callista had good grades, and the teachers liked her, which made Fiona insanely jealous. She would gather people to surround Callista in the restroom, berating her, forcing her to kneel and apologize, or spreading rumors if she refused. The room went deathly silent. Then another voice cut in with a cold laugh. She didn't just do it once or twice. I remember the sports meet. Callista had signed up, but the participant list was forcibly altered by Fiona. When the teacher called the names, Callista couldn't compete and was scolded harshly. And that English speech contest, Callista had prepared diligently. But Fiona sneakily stole the script in advance and replaced it with nonsense, causing the whole school to burst into laughter. You probably don't know, but Callista ran back to the classroom in tears that day. Yet the next day, Fiona claimed Callista had sabotaged her, trying to steal her chance. She was a master of deception, always the perpetrator, yet crying like the victim. Each statement cut like a knife, sinking deep into everyone's hearts. These wealthy, influential young elites had long been dissatisfied with Fiona. Back then, everyone played together on roughly equal footing, yet Fiona always dominated. They had thought that once the true heiress returned, Fiona, the imposter, might behave. But instead, the Corvin family's indulgence had made her even more reckless. All of us were doted on by our families. Who would want to be Fiona's puppet? The three men's faces grew increasingly grim. Jason's fingers clenched so tightly the veins stood out. Simon and Ethan's hearts churned like stormy seas as memories replayed, Fiona sobbing with feigned innocence, their own anger scolding Callista. Looking back now, it all seemed like a cruel joke. After a brief hesitation, someone spoke up coldly. What about the birthday banquet a few days ago?
Why is no one mentioning that?
Everyone's expression stiffened. The person gritted their teeth. At that time, it was Fiona herself who slapped herself hard. Then she wailed loudly, claiming Callista did it, saying Callista was jealous. And yet, you didn't even ask, just believed her, even going so far as to strip Callista's clothes and humiliate her. Are you really her brothers? The three men felt as though struck by thunder. Especially Jason. Images from that day flashed vividly. The despair, the injustice in Callista's eyes, still etched as clearly as ever. It had all been a setup. He could no longer stay seated. Just then, the private room door swung open. Fiona walked back in, stepping lightly in her high heels, her voice and demeanor dripping with sweetness. What are you all talking about? Before she could finish, a crisp, sharp sound echoed through the room. Fiona was caught completely off guard, staggering backward, her vision swimming. Jason, why did you hit me? She clutched her burning cheek, eyes wide with disbelief. Jason stared at her coldly, his gaze filled with overwhelming hatred and icy detachment. Why did I hit you? Don't you understand, Fiona? I'm making you pay for everything Callista suffered. Fiona recoiled, panic flashing across her face. She instinctively looked at her two older brothers. Simon. Ethan. Stop him. He's going to kill me. Simon's eyes darkened. He stepped in front of Jason, extending his hands to restrain him. Jason, enough. Jason let out a sharp, cold laugh. Enough? You think this is enough? She killed Callista. Jason. Ethan's voice was tight, his face full of conflict. Callista is gone. Torturing Fiona won't bring her back. No matter how vicious she is, she's still the sister we raised. Simon took a deep breath, eyes heavy with complexity. Yes, we should punish her. But after all, she is the sister we raised. The adoption relationship will be cancelled. From now on, she has nothing to do with the Corvin family. Her life is her own responsibility. We will not give her a shred of protection. He paused, then added in a low voice, Jason, this is already the harshest punishment we can give her. Fiona felt a glimmer of relief, delight flashing in her eyes. Her eldest brother would protect her. As long as she wasn't handed over to Jason, she still had a way out. She could act coy, stall for time, and maybe when their hearts softened, they wouldn't cancel the adoption. She would remain the most cherished sister of the Corvin family. Suppressing the fear and hatred rising within her, she rushed forward, clutching Simon's hand, tears streaming down her face. Simon, you're the best. You wouldn't abandon me, right? I knew you'd help me. Jason watched the scene before him and let out a cold, humorless smile. But that smile chilled to the bone. Punishment? Haha, do you really think this is punishment? Simon, Ethan, you're still deceiving yourselves, leaving her a way out? His gaze hardened. He flicked the remote, his voice cold as steel. Then take a good look. See clearly what exactly you've been protecting. The large screen suddenly lit up. On it was Fiona's room. She had shed all pretense, her face twisted with malice as she sat before her makeup mirror, venting her poisonous thoughts into the empty air. Callista, that wretched girl. Thank goodness she's dead. Why should our Corvin family be dragged down by her? Every day she lived was an eyesore to me. And Simon and Ethan, what a joke. They're so naive, convinced they're righteous. All it takes is a few tears from me, and they fall for it. They actually believe they're noble. The sister they dote on doesn't even care about them. Ethan? Even more pathetic. One little pout, and he melts, then dares to claim he'll protect me forever? Protect what, exactly?
Ha!
If it weren't for the Corvin family name, he couldn't even keep his own company from collapsing. What a useless fool. Both of them, utterly foolish. If I hadn't pretended to be obedient, they'd have seen through me long ago.
Haha.
Those precious treasures of the family are nothing but idiots I toyed with. They loved the wrong person, blamed the wrong person. How hilarious is that? Callista is finally dead. Those two stupid brothers actually cared about her? I will never let that happen. The curses from the video cut like a knife, plunging straight into the hearts of the three men. The room fell into a deathly silence. Fiona's face went pale, her legs giving way as she nearly collapsed to the floor.
No.
It's fake. It's been doctored. Don't believe it. Fiona cried and pleaded, but no eyes lingered on her anymore. Simon's hands trembled. He had always prided himself on fairness, on treating his siblings equally. With their parents gone, he had assumed the weight of responsibility as eldest brother, almost raising Fiona single-handedly. And now, he watched helplessly as the so-called sister called him stupid behind his back, boasting she had toyed with him at her whim. The last vestige of his resolve crumbled completely. He murmured in a low voice, "So, I was the biggest joke all along." A sharp pain gripped his chest, almost knocking him off his feet. Ethan's hands shook violently, veins bulging on his forehead. He recalled every time he had defended Fiona, every moment he had scolded Callista instead. That little girl had always looked up to him, relied on him, admired him, but he had pushed her away, even scolded her. "Why can't you be as sensible as Fiona? Can't you stop embarrassing me?" Each word stabbed back into his chest like a blade. Callista. He couldn't hold back. He pounded his own chest with a furious fist, tears instantly blurring his vision. "Callista, I'm sorry. I was wrong. But that girl, the one whose eyes had always belonged to them, was gone, reduced to nothing." Jason's eyes burned red. He glared at Fiona, his voice hoarse. "Do you see now? This is the sister you've been protecting. The one you defended with all your strength is a venomous snake. And the sister you called your own, truly gentle and kind, was driven to the brink by you, and in the end, not even her bones remain." He clenched his teeth and roared, his voice shattering the silence.
She's dead.
She's dead. The three pairs of eyes sat in frozen silence. Fiona panicked completely. She sank to the ground, crying and shouting. "No. Simon, please listen. I can explain. This is all fake. I didn't." But no one was willing to look at her anymore. Simon closed his eyes, his voice cold and resolute. "From now on, you have nothing to do with the Corvin family." Ethan spoke softly, each word dripping with bitterness. "Fiona, you deserve to go to hell." Fiona finally realized Jason had truly lost control. She was dragged into the cold, shadowed mansion. Once the door shut, the darkness pressed in around her like a coffin. At first, she cried out for help, but soon her voice was swallowed by sobs and fear. On the cold stone floor, she was forced to kneel, hour after hour. Only when her knees were scraped and bleeding did she realize this was no momentary punishment. It was calculated, sustained torment. Jason stood before her, expression indifferent, like a detached arbiter observing a trial. "Does it hurt?" Fiona's face was streaked with tears, her body trembling as she nodded. "Yes, Jason, it really hurts. I know I was wrong." Jason's eyes were red, yet his smile was icy cold. This is how Callista knelt. Do you know how many times she knelt? For nearly 10 years. A chill ran through Fiona's heart. She raised her head in terror, only to meet his lifeless, merciless eyes. Then the whip came down. She screamed, cried, and writhed in pain, nearly losing consciousness. But each wail met only Jason's deepening coldness. He did not rage, did not lose control. He delivered whip after whip with icy precision. That night, Fiona was locked in a pitch-dark room. The air was damp and musty, and in the corners, spider webs swarmed with countless black shapes. Fiona trembled, pressed herself against the wall, pounding on the door with all her strength, desperate to escape. "I'm scared. I'm so scared. Jason, please let me out. I can't take it anymore." But the only response she received was a chilling, emotionless sentence. "Callista cried and screamed like this back then too. Yet weren't you the one laughing so happily?" Fiona was on the verge of madness, trembling violently, unable to close her eyes all night. By dawn, she was so weak she could barely stand. But this was only the beginning. Her blood drawn, her arms turning cold, her body nearly collapsing, Jason looked at her coldly and asked in a low, chilling voice, "What? You can't endure it?" Back then, Callista was forced by you, drawn blood again and again, her body ruined long ago. That night, locked in the bathroom, she knelt on the icy floor, tears and snot mingling. The cold crept inch by inch into her bones, pushing her to the brink of collapse. The worst of all was the shame. Her clothes were torn, and with the camera trained on her, she teetered on the edge of insanity. "Don't film. Don't, Jason, I beg you." Jason watched silently, his voice low and hoarse. "Back then, didn't you also laugh at Callista and say, 'Behave, or I'll let the whole world see you in disgrace'?" Fiona screamed, crying herself hoarse, yet no mercy came. She was in unbearable pain, even wishing for death, yet every time she fainted, someone ruthlessly forced her awake, making her endure another taste of hell. Fiona finally understood. What she endured back then was not occasional punishment, but a decade-long torment and despair. And now, after just a few days, she was already on the verge of madness. Meanwhile, far away in Barcelona, I had no idea what was happening back home. Here, I was living well. Ronald remained the same as in childhood, gentle, patient. He provided all the learning resources I needed, guided me to explore new environments, and encouraged steady progress. At first, I thought he didn't care about my past. But gradually, I realized he was quietly healing me in his own way. All the emotions that had no outlet found reassurance within the boundaries he set. It felt safe, almost comforting. He watched over my physical and mental well-being in silence. Every medical checkup, every psychological assessment, arranged subtly, never seeking praise, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. It made me want to thank him, yet I never found the chance. So I quietly helped him in small ways, reminding him to eat, organizing his documents, urging him not to stay up late. Gradually, life began to light up bit by bit. For the first time, I truly felt grateful to the Corbin family. When I went to university, they had arranged a good school for me, fearful of losing face. That school became my foundation, allowing me to establish a career I loved, even here in Barcelona. Now, I no longer relied on Ronald. I could stand firmly on my own efforts. The scars behind me were gradually fading, just like the scars in my heart. They had finally started to scab over. Even I found it somewhat unbelievable when I became a screenwriter. At first, it was only a way to vent emotions with nowhere to go. I poured my past experiences, fragmented stories, and broken dreams into one script after another. I never expected that what truly touched people's hearts wasn't technique, but the authenticity that flowed straight from my own heart. Just a few days ago, a movie script I wrote was selected by Jonathan, a famous director from Barcelona. It was a realistic story centered on female growth, and he said my writing carried a tenderness that endured even after tearing open a wound, making it perfect for the big screen. The press conference was scheduled for that afternoon. I had been pacing around the estate since morning, my steps erratic, like a small bird trapped in a cage. With every circle I made, my heart pounded faster. Ronald sat quietly on the sofa, watching me fidget, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Only when I was nearly dizzy from my pacing did he speak softly. "Callista." I stopped and looked up at him. "Don't be nervous." His voice was gentle, carrying a power that seemed capable of soothing every emotion. "I'll go with you when the time comes." I froze. "You're going to go with me?" He nodded slightly, as if there were no question at all. "Of course. This is your honor. I want to witness it." My heart skipped a beat, uncontrollably. I opened my mouth, but words failed me. In the end, I just lowered my head and murmured a quiet, while the tips of my ears burned. On either side of the press conference red carpet, flashbulbs exploded in rapid succession as reporters and media swarmed in. Perhaps because Ronald and I were both striking the moment we appeared, we immediately drew attention from a large group of journalists. Some people even mistook us for celebrities and surged forward, raising cameras. The crowd pressed and pushed relentlessly. Ronald instinctively half-embraced me, holding me close as he guided us through the throng. His hand was steady, the warmth of his palm pressing through my clothes, calming my wildly racing heart just a little. But just as we were about to break free, a reckless reporter lunged forward. Ronald stumbled slightly, and the arm that had been protecting me tightened into a full embrace. I was held firmly within his arms. As I breathed, the familiar, cool scent of him washed over me. In that instant, I heard a heartbeat, thumping like a drum, so rapid it felt unreal. But I couldn't tell whether it was his or mine. We pretended nothing had happened and quickly joined the directors. I had no idea that this moment had already been captured by a pair of eyes not far away, staring at me with an intensity that froze everything. Jason was there for the press conference before the film festival's opening. For some unknown reason, the Corvin and Whitlock family companies had been repeatedly suppressed by foreign giants, leaving him nearly overwhelmed. To find new investors, he had no choice but to set aside his pride and attend in person. But he never expected to see me here, the woman he had believed dead for a year, now alive, standing right before his eyes. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a hallucination. And in front of everyone, I was held in the arms of another man. The sight stabbed his eyes sharper than any blade. His breathing faltered, his chest tightening as if it had been torn open, blood surging violently. This past year, he hadn't been well. Night after night, he woke from nightmares, haunted by my smile, my tenderness. He couldn't sleep. He drank, scrolling endlessly through the few remaining photos on his phone. Each glance reminded him, I was gone. But now, here I was, very much alive and not in his arms, but in another man's. Jason felt all the blood drain from his body. His throat tightened, his chest suffocating as if it might burst. The noise of the press conference faded into the distance, leaving only the image of me in a pale-colored dress in his mind. I smiled, nervous yet calm, securely held by Ronald, as if I had found a new place to belong. Jason's hand clenched into a tight fist, veins bulging. The press conference finally drew to a close amid a flurry of flashbulbs and the clamor of reporters. The directors were escorted out by the media, and I followed, guided by my assistant. The tension in my chest finally loosened a little. But just as I took a step forward, a familiar figure appeared, blocking my path. Jason. His gaze was fixed on me, as if I were the last lifeline before drowning. For a moment, I forgot to breathe. A whole year, I had thought I would never see him again in this lifetime. And now, he stood just a few steps away, the sharpness in his features familiar, yet blurred in my memory. Though his expression was stern and cold, the redness in his eyes, the faintly bloodshot rims, betrayed the emotions he had been restraining for so long. He didn't demand an explanation immediately. His voice was hoarse as he said, "Come with me." Those 3 words were a plea, forged with every ounce of strength he had left. I looked at him, and a sudden haze swept through my chest. I truly couldn't recall the details of the events from a year ago. Many nights, my dreams were fragmented and vague, leaving only a sense of oppression and endless darkness. When I woke, I couldn't even tell whether it was memory or illusion. Perhaps my body had protected me, automatically blocking out unbearable pain. So when I looked at the man in front of me, I didn't immediately connect him to those nightmares. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "Jason," I said evenly, as if discussing something unrelated, "there's nothing between us anymore. I've moved on with my life. Just consider me dead." The moment the words fell, his shoulders trembled. His eyes reddened further, his throat feeling as if blocked by stone. After a long pause, he finally forced out, How can I consider you dead? Callista, I've been looking for you for a year. I've missed you for a year. Don't you know, every single day His voice choked with emotion. He was on the verge of breaking, yet stepped forward, inch by inch. "I don't want to question you, and I don't want to chase why you're here. I just want to take you back, take you home." That stubbornness and desperation was like a trapped beast striking back. But he couldn't reach me. In the next moment, black-clad bodyguards silently positioned themselves in front of Ronald and me, coldly blocking Jason. Ronald stepped forward slowly, standing by my side. He remained as gentle and composed as ever. "Callista." I looked back and saw the steadiness in his gaze. "What we agreed on back then," he said softly. "Once you're with me, you won't go back." In that moment, he was still a gentleman, still giving me all the space to choose. But as he looked at Jason, a stormy chill flashed in the depths of his eyes. My heart skipped a beat. For some reason, I even felt a faint urge to smile. I reached out, taking Ronald's hand. It was the first time I had actively chosen to stand by his side. "Jason," I said to the man in front of me, my voice calm and resolute, "I'm not going back with you. Or rather, I'm not coming back to the country at all. I'm very happy with my life now." I paused, meeting his eyes as they gradually clouded over, and continued, "I don't hate you, and I don't care about you. Let's part ways amicably." This was neither a bitter curse nor an act of revenge. It was simply the truest voice of my heart at that moment. Jason could no longer hold back. Tears finally fell from his eyes, his voice trembling. Callista, you don't know how I've spent this past year. I took revenge on Fiona, made her suffer the pain you endured back then. Simon, Ethan missed you too. We thought you were dead. We even held a funeral for you. Every day, we lived in regret. Now that you're safe, all we want is for you to come home. Come home. Those 2 words carried a plea so humble, it was almost painful. But I shook my head gently. What you want is your business. It has nothing to do with me, I said coldly, each word deliberate and clear. I don't care, and I'm not concerned. I finally have a real family now. With that, I didn't look at Jason again. I turned and took Ronald's hand, walking away. Ronald lowered his gaze slightly, noticing my hand tightly holding his, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. As we passed Jason, he paused for a moment, his voice barely above a whisper, meant for only one person to hear. Don't push your luck. His tone was calm, almost gentle, even carrying a trace of a smile. But behind that smile was a sharpness so suffocating it could cut. If you continue to be stubborn, the Whitlock family and the Corvin family can cease to exist. In that moment, Jason's pupils constricted sharply. His entire body froze, the hand he had meant to reach out hanging in midair, unable to move another inch. Jason finally understood why his company had been repeatedly targeted by foreign corporations recently. It was because of Ronald. Torn between his love and his company, Jason struggled endlessly, yet remained motionless. All he could do was watch helplessly as I walked away, holding another man's hand. He longed for me to turn back, to glance at him. If only I had said I wanted him, he would have risked everything to take me away. But I didn't look back. I truly didn't love him anymore. The realization drained the color from Jason's face. He fainted on the spot. When he was taken to the hospital, he was told that due to overwork he had developed stomach cancer. In that moment, he realized there was no longer any way for him to win me back. Ronald and I confirmed our relationship on an utterly ordinary night. We were adults who felt something for each other, so why not give it a try? Unlike the past love filled with possessiveness and coercion, what Ronald gave me was always patience and respect. He didn't interfere when I lost track of day and night, immersed in my scripts. He would only remind me to rest when necessary. Though Ronald seemed indifferent, he quietly took care of even the most trivial matters in my life, without me noticing. He rarely said the word love, yet in his silent presence and protection, he showed me the answer. I gradually grew accustomed to this kind of love. I still immerse myself quickly in my work as a screenwriter. With my new script selected by a director, I hurried back and forth between writing and revising, often losing track of time entirely. Occasionally, I would run into members of the Corvin family on the street. Their expressions were disheveled, weariness etched into their features, no longer the glory they once held. When they saw me, their eyes were complicated, as if they wanted to speak. But I simply looked away gently and passed by them as if they were strangers. They didn't manage to catch up to me either. Now, they no longer had the strength. Every time Ronald acted with that calm detachment, it was precise and merciless. He never explained things directly to me, but the news from outside was enough for me to understand. The Whitlock family and the Corvin family were steadily losing, one business battle after another. They were too busy dealing with setbacks to entangle me again. Perhaps, at last, they had come to understand what it truly means to regret one's past mistakes. And I never looked back. I no longer pursued a love that promised eternal constancy. Those past promises, having gone through betrayal and pain, were worthless. Yet I knew clearly that my heart would always stir for a steadfast presence. What Ronald gave me wasn't an empty vow, but a choice to be with me, to stand by my side unwaveringly, through everything. So no matter how the world outside shifted, as long as I sat at my desk, typing out my own stories, I could feel a quiet, full happiness. Late at night, I would occasionally glance up and see a calm figure at the doorway of my study. Ronald didn't disturb me. He just quietly watched, and only when I looked up and met his gaze did he softly remind me, "It's late. Go rest." Then I would smile, close my laptop, and walk toward the one who had always been waiting for me.